When you look at really successful, strong, powerful women, it's always tempting to think, but nothing's ever wrong in their life. They're always living the most perfect, wonderful life. And yes, sometimes that's true, and yes, sometimes that's not true. Because actually, I work with strong, successful, powerful women every single day of my life in Nosh Detox. And what I have found is that behind every strong, successful woman, there are things that you are not sure about, you worry about, and actually you might need help with, just like you do. So my name is Geeta Sidhu-Robb, and today, in this series of strong, successful women, we're talking to a very, very good friend of mine and a very successful businesswoman, Wendy Powell, who runs Mutu System. Hi, Wendy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, no, thanks for coming. Tell me a little bit about what you're, because you run Mutu, which is a global, kind of like a health and fitness business, really.
Yeah.
How does a normal day look like for you?
Well, I think what is often the challenge for those of us that work in health and fitness is the practice what you preach part. So yes, absolutely. I run Mutu System, which is a global web platform for mums, for mothers, to restore their pelvic floor and core specifically and get their confidence and their mojo back when they become mothers. And we talk a lot about daily movement. We talk about restorative exercise. We talk about great nutrition. So what a day for me looks like is now it's very much running that business, which is a global e-commerce business, as opposed to my sort of former life as a fitness instructor where I'm actually doing it. So,
but you're also a mother,
yes,
and you're a wife,
yes,
and you're a sister, and you're a friend. So tell me about the personal side of you. How does that work? You wake up in the morning, around what time?
Sure, so I wake up around 7. My kids are 12 and 14 now, so they get themselves to school. I don't have to do that.
Oh, hooray.
Yes, so
I hated that part in the morning.
Yeah, it's definitely the easier part now. They sort themselves out. My husband's the cook in the family, because my children wouldn't eat so well if it was down to me, which again is another example of, you know, I know a lot about nutrition and I understand good food and real food and clean food, but I'm not the cook. I'm not a chef.
But it's really important to know what you're not good at,
exactly,
and what is not your job to do. And I'm sure if you had to cook, you'd become good at it, but it's just not your job.
It's not my job.
So that's very interesting, because that is another facet that I always see with successful women. In fact, because you're the breadwinner in your family.
Yes.
And so what actually happens is that this is a role reversal from how we grew up, how your parents were and how my parents were. Because you're the breadwinner, your husband actually looks after, who is wonderful, looks after the house.
He literally, I often describe it as he makes the rest of our lives happen, so I can do this. So I travel a lot, I'm in the States a lot, I'm on planes a lot, I'm around the country, and because we have the situation at home that we do, it means that I can just up and go. So I am dependent on that support and on that teamwork.
But do you think it's unusual that as a woman you can say that and you know that? Because how many men that are successful, who you know their lives are only working because there is a wife at home looking after the kids, how many men in an interview will sit down and say, so my life works because my wife takes care of the rest of my life?
I don't know where my children are supposed to be most of the time. So, you know,
I would like to do that.
Don't get me wrong, it makes me sound like a terrible parent, but no, it's...
But it doesn't, it just makes you sound like a guy.
Yes, maybe. It's the day-to-day where they're supposed to be making sure everything's happening, that they're picked up from a club, whatever it might be, my husband handles that. So that I can handle the business. It's because my business is international, it means that time zones come into play. I often work late at night, I work strange hours. I absolutely need that. It's a team. I sometimes compare it to being sort of the lead singer in a band. You might be the one out there that everybody sees, but nothing happens without everything behind you.
Do you think you give that much credit because you're a woman?
Possibly. I think, like you say, men, you don't often hear men mention that. Do they even realise? I don't know. Do they think fairies make that stuff happen? I don't know.
We should find one and ask them about the fairies. There's the house fairy, the dust fairy, the ferrying fairy, the children fairy, the food fairy. Yes, no, that's really interesting. And so what do you find what do you struggle with? What is the thing that you find the hardest? Because so you've got the home sort of sorted, you are the breadwinner, you've got a successful business. What's the hardest?
I would say that the challenges with being a business person, an entrepreneur, a leader, is that you don't have that structure that maybe a 9-to-5 type job has.
Yeah.
And because you don't have
there's no beginning and no end.
Exactly. And that's the problem. Because I, as I say, often work late into the night because of time zones. And just because that's when I'm working, I'll often be working on a Sunday. It's like the switching off. Switching off, I would say, is definitely a challenge for anybody running their own business at whatever level, because there's nobody to tell you it's time to go home now. It's time to shut the laptop.
Do you have days that you allocate where you just don't work?
I'm getting better at it.
Because that is actually something, that's something that I did.
Mm.
I looked at it, and we have this balance sheet technique. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But in the balance sheet technique, when you put in what you do and don't do across a day, within that, put days where you just don't work. Because I used to do that. I worked literally, when the kids went to sleep, I'd go back to work, because that's what you did.
Mm.
But put in a day, and when you have a day where you think, I will not work in that day, it kind of gains its own, it becomes sacrosanct, because then you don't work on that day, because you've thought about not working on that day.
I like that. I do try to keep, for example, Fridays, I'll do, if I need to get my hair done, if I try to put all those sort of me things on one day and then not do too much work, but I think that's a great idea. So did you stick to it straight away?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did, but no, not straight away. It took me about a 3-month lead-in.
Yeah.
But I think that's what does happen, because whenever you're living the way we live, I think 3-month lead-ins are it becomes a commitment, a goal, an aspiration. No, I think it's an aspiration, a goal, a commitment, a reality.
Yeah.
And if you follow that pathway, you also don't beat yourself up the time it doesn't work, but you're like, I just don't work on Saturdays. I will not work on a Saturday. I don't even care if the moon is, I don't work on a Saturday. And my other senior manager doesn't work on a Sunday.
Okay.
And so we've got that kind of balance where she's like, so on a Saturday, if there's a crisis, I'm like, I throw it at her. And on Sunday, if there's something, I pick it up. Because it's just like, otherwise you can't ever stop.
It's teamwork again.
Again, yes.
You need somebody who's got your back. You need a wingman.
How do your kids feel about this? Because you must be different to their friends' parents.
Yeah, it's. I think on the positive side, I think to see a parent, whichever parent it is or both, to see them working, I think is a really positive role model. So my kids know that I'm busy a lot, but they see it. I'm not just disappearing out the house and not coming back till late at night. I work from home. I might have meetings at home. I'll be on conference calls. So whilst I am in and out and I do travel, they see me work.
Yeah.
So they can see what I'm actually doing and why it takes time. So if it's like I'm on a call now for the next couple hours, or I'm recording, or whatever it might be, that's fine, and then I'm free. So I think I think the positive is that they have a very real sense of what my work looks like, what mum's work looks like. Yes, they sometimes get frustrated, you know, if we're supposed to be on vacation and I'm taking a call or whatever. But what I am a lot better at now is when we are away as a family or got time off as a family, in that I might say, right, I need to check in for an hour.
Exactly.
I'm going to go do that, and then I'm done. And that works, and they appreciate that, and you know, everybody knows.
Well, it works for you, and it works for everybody else, because
Exactly.
it's like, here's the time where I'm going to be fixing this and move on.
Yes. So if it needs answering today, I'll do it today, and then I'm done. So yes, that's a lot better. I think that there is an element to if your only understanding of parents going to work is putting on a suit and disappearing and coming back later, then there's really no concept. So I think what's also great when kids are surrounded by not just my business, but the people I know, like yourself and like the other people that I work with and collaborate with. So my kids are very exposed to lots of different ways of making a living. They don't see just that sort of structured, this profession or that profession sort of future.
No, and I really like that. I think because the way that work is actually evolving, there isn't going to be one set way to work.
Exactly.
So this is a great way to do that, because they can sort of think, right, I could do this and I could do this, which then is more worrying because there's too many choices.
Yes.
You know, there's none of that good old Indian growing up thing of doctor, lawyer, accountant, and off you go.
They'll probably rebel and do that.
Exactly. They should all go off and become lawyers just to make us, you know. So there is that whole immigrant mentality. And how do you find it works with like, because I know, for example, that you work really quite closely with your sister because she's part of your team.
She is.
How does that work in terms of your family? Is it better having family there because you can trust her, for example?
It's a really interesting question, and that's quite a recent development.
Yeah.
So my sister does now do some work for me. She works for me part-time. She has another job as well, but and she works for me in a capacity as a sort of executive assistant, support. So where she comes in is for literally being my wingman, wingwoman, when it comes to appearances or speaking or travelling, that kind of thing. And that's when that trust element is just amazing. So as the business has gotten bigger and more successful, then I think that trust element certainly is relevant.
It's more relevant,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But my sister looks after me when we're travelling or I'm appearing. So for example, one of her many hats that she wears is she's also a yoga teacher. So before I go out to do anything, it's like, we're going to do 20 minutes yoga, or we're going to do 5 minutes yoga, whatever it is. So there is that, and also I get to, I think the lovely thing about involving family in business, and certainly as we're in both our successes and our not so successes and our trials, but is that they get to kind of come along for the ride.
Yeah,
so
and they get to understand and see what you're doing.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's issue. And even for you, I wonder if there are questions that are coming up for you as you watch us having a conversation. Please put the questions down in the comment section, and then what we'll do is pick those up. I'll pick them up in another conversation. I'll pick them up in another interview. But I wonder, that was the other thing I was thinking, because so many of my clients, particularly my coaching clients, really struggle with the fact that their mothers really don't understand them because their lives are so different. Are you finding that?
I think, I wouldn't say she doesn't understand me, but to say she doesn't understand my business would be an understatement. Yes, and I think that is very typical. Certainly those of us who work in a sort of online environment, it's like, what is it?
That you do.
What do you do?
How do you do it?
Yes, so there's definitely a sort of not totally understanding exactly what goes on every day, but they're super proud, and they certainly have those insecurities in the early days when things aren't going so well, and it's like, can't you just get a normal
job? Go to an office.
Get a real job. So yes, but once that passes, I'm like, oh, okay. I don't quite know what she's doing, but it seems to be working.
Yes, the benefits are here.
Yeah.
Okay, so to kind of finish up, what would you think is the most wonderful part of your life and the way that you live? Because it's an unusual way. We're pioneers in what we do. What is the most wonderful part of how you live and work?
I would say, my North Star for everything is freedom. And I think that it's freedom to do things and freedom not to do things.
Yeah.
So it's because I get to, as we've said, it can have its disadvantages, this sort of chaotic non-structure, but it literally does also mean that every day I wake up and pretty much get to decide how my day looks. Which is
phenomenal,
awesome.
and it's worth everything.
Yes.
Where do you feel most powerful?
Teaching or speaking, getting a message of empowerment and inspiration across to a room full of women, whether that's 3 women or 3,000 women. Having women realise and understand, I deserve to feel better about my body.
Yeah.
I deserve this, and I can have it. So yes, definitely at my most powerful then.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope that was interesting. I loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. And please ask the questions that you want to ask of women like Wendy, that you just aren't sure how they do it, or how, if you want to live like that, what would you need to do to get there? And please also like the video if you liked it. Share it with somebody who does want to set up on their own business, who does want to feel more powerful, wants to have more freedom, make more choices for themselves, because not many people can live like that, and I think it's really important. And subscribe so that you know when we put out another video. And thank you so much for joining us.